former senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Bukola Saraki, has called on the United Kingdom and the European Union to take a cue from the United States and also ban election riggers in Nigeria. Saraki made the call on Tuesday while speaking at an event organized by the Center for Advancement of Civil Liberties to mark this year's International Day of Democracy. On Monday, the U.S. placed visa restrictions on individuals who undermined the governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states, about a year after it took similar measures against those who compromised the 2019 elections. Saraki also called for an urgent reform in the Electoral Act, stating that it will help in shaping the nation's democracy, sustain and promote equity among the citizens. Consequently, the clamor by citizens and civil organizations for a reformed electoral law has become more strident in recent times. In the build-up to the last general election, hopes were high that some reforms were going to take place in the remaking of the primary law that guides the conduct of elections in the country. But the optimism was extinguished soon as it developed.
Thank you very much, Ario. Once again, it is a pleasure for me to join this great forum focused on how to strengthen democracy and reform the electoral process in our dear country. I believe the issue being examined here today is very apt, not only because it suits the tenor of the United Nations endorsed International Day for Democracy, but also because it holds a key to some of the present problems confronting our nation. The topic of today is so relevant in light of the recent events from the United States, where for the first time in a century, there are fears of electoral fraud in their November elections, to Belarus, where recent presidential election fraught with malpractices is being violently resisted despite the crackdown by President Alexander Lukashenko security forces, to Mali, where electoral fraud has led to military takeover, and then Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire, where there is a looming crisis due to perversion of the constitutional process. It is obvious, therefore, that there is serious worldwide threat against democracy. I want to commend the organizers of this forum for taking the initiative and arranging this event. In my view, nothing threatens our democracy more than faulty electoral process. We cannot afford to allow our populace lose faith in the democratic process. That would be a recipe for chaos. So the decision of your organization to put together this forum is a very patriotic one. One would have expected this initiative to have been spearheaded by political parties, politicians, elected and appointed officials who should recognize that the issue of having a credible electoral reform is very important. But what we have seen instead is that some of us politicians are not being sincere, or we are not demonstrating the proper understanding of what is at stake. I can see people already talking about their aspiration for 2023, forming groups here and there in preparation for their campaigns. Such politicians should know that without a credible electoral process, the next election is already compromised and endangered. I sincerely hope that if we get it right, and when the history is written about the success of 2023 election, reference will be made to today's efforts made by organizers of this forum. History should record you as having started the movement that led to the necessary reforms that will take place. It is particularly good that the bulk of our audience here today are youth. This is because in all the fight against the threat to democracy across the world, it is the youth that take the lead. So it is very encouraging that Nigerian youth are playing that role too, as exemplified by today's program. This should be the case because social economic development presents a bright future for the youth in our country, where there are job opportunities as well as security of lives and properties. All this can only be achieved when we have stability in our democracy. One of the settled issues in Nigeria and Africa as a whole is that Africans have chosen democracy as the best form of governance. And this is a resolve that must be defended by all citizens, governments, and their leaders. I believe this resolve in favor of democracy by Nigerians is evident in the fact that we have sustained it as a system of government in the last 21 years. And within this period, we have achieved not only successful transition between different governments, but also from one political party to another. However, instead of our democracy to be maturing and for the process to be getting better, certain ugly developments have shown that we now begin to have elections that are devoid of the tenets of representative democracy. For example, we should all ask ourselves this question: why is it that after 21 years of sustained democracy, our electoral process is witnessing more violence and litigations? Why is it that more final decisions as to who is elected or not being taken are being taken by the courts? How come that the court verdicts on election petitions are now becoming a perversion of the decision made by the electorate when they cast their votes at the polling stations? Why is it that the spate of electoral petitions and judicial verdicts seem to be making a mess of the age-long judicial principle of stare decisis on what is generally known as precedent? Yet, there are still more questions. Why do participants in elections have the belief that the security agents play more determining roles in the outcome of elections? In recent times, why are there fears by most participants that the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) may not be fair in the elections? These are questions I believe should help us to interrogate the topic of today. It is a serious problem when people are unable to freely elect those who govern them. The rigging of electoral process is an indirect invitation to chaos. Our electoral process must be transparent, free, fair, and credible if we must claim to be practicing democracy. We must ensure that the ballot box remains the outlet for ventilating legitimate grievances and changing government. The next general election in this country is even more important because it signifies the end of a tenure. The election will be supervised by a president who is not eligible to recontest. The last time we're in this same situation was in 2007. And we all saw what happened. These elections are judged largely unfair. So if we do nothing, from what we saw in the election of 2019, the elections in Kogi and Bayelsa recently, and the telltale signs we are seeing as preparation to Edo elections, 2023 election could be worse. It must be noted that the rigging of the electoral process is not just about manipulation of figures during elections. It spans the issue of registration of voters, process of involving candidates, internal operations and administration of political parties, preparation by electoral commission, equal treatment meted out to all political parties by electoral bodies, genuine independence by electoral commission, neutrality of the security agencies, and patriotic consciousness of the electorate to always act with good conscience. The growth of democracy also requires having truly strong and impartial democratic institutions that can act above the dictates of the party and people in power and honestly exercise their powers as provided by law. Let me now take the issue to the day-to-day occurrence in the political process. Our aim at this forum should be to formulate an agenda of sets of recommendations which will help to make our democracy stronger, develop its institution, and make our elections free, fair, peaceful, and credible. As a way forward, we must see that many more fora of this nature should be organized and used as a platform to mobilize all stakeholders, politicians, civil society groups, non-governmental organizations, youth groups, women associations, professional groups, and development partners on the need to realize the importance and desirability of electoral reform. The amendment to the Electoral Act should be made an urgent task. The work done by the last National Assembly is very comprehensive. And I remember the president's comments while rejecting the last version presented to him was that it was close to the commencement of the last elections, and he did not want a confusion to be created as to whether the elections were being guided by the 2010 Act or the 2019 law. The 9th National Assembly should quickly work on the Electoral Act now that the general election is almost 30 months away. Completing work on the passage of the Electoral Act now will save both the legislature and the executive the distraction that partisanship can create for them. Remember that the only problem with the last amendment of the Electoral Act is that, unfortunately, it became a victim of partisan consideration. It is necessary that whilst we do our bit at home, we call on the international community to help curb actions of politicians who undermine democracy. Here, the US decision yesterday to place visa restrictions on certain Nigerian politicians for their ignoble roles in the 2019 elections is commendable. I call on the UK and European Union to follow suit. This is necessary to send the right and strong signal that those who undermine democracy in Nigeria are enemies of the rest of the democratic world. The sanctions should go beyond politicians, include electoral officers, security officials, and judicial officers who undermine our democracy by their actions during and after elections. Let me also state here that the legislature and the executive must find a statutory solution to the use of illegal interference in the electoral process by security agencies. Maybe there should be a law that prevents the deployment of the military for election assignments. We should ensure strict compliance with the law on this, or even go further to enshrine this in our constitution. Elections are civil engagements and should be left to both the police, civil defense, and security corps. This should be legislated and provided for in the Constitution or the Electoral Act. It is also important we come in strong in the enforcement of provisions of the law. We provide for punishment of politicians, law enforcement agents, ordinary citizens, and electoral officers who are caught subverting the electoral process. All stakeholders must show commitment to diligent enforcement of and compliance with the law. These had been addressed in 2010 Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2019 that was worked upon by the 8th National Assembly. It is also important to stress that democracy can only grow if those of us who are politicians get ready to play by the rules at all times. No matter how perfect the bill and the law can be, we have a responsibility as the actors. Politicians must stop the mentality of electoral victory at all costs. The stability of the nation's democracy and peace of the nation are definitely higher goals than the personal aspiration of individual politicians. Politicians must learn to always act in a manner that gives confidence to the people that truly elections still provide the best process for sourcing leaders and kicking out those that are not wanted by the people. I want to also quickly point out that I am eminently qualified to pontificate on this, as I can use myself as an example. I went into elections in 2019 in Kwara State under my party, the People's Democratic Party. My party and myself lost the elections. We had our reservations on the credibility of the entire electoral process. We had good evidence of illegal deployment of state forces and other undemocratic means to achieve the result declared by electoral body. The whole country witnessed the level of desperation displayed by those who could not tolerate our guts to turn the election results against us. The utterances of the former chairman of the APC, who continuously boasted about how his #1 priority and objective was to win Kwara State. But after the results of the 2019 elections were announced, I sent out messages to my followers that despite their anger and quest to express their grievances, that they should accept the result and maintain peace. I congratulated the winners and urged our people to support the newly elected officials. To further demonstrate good faith and gracefulness in defeat, I refused to challenge the process at the tribunal. With this experience, I believe one is in a good position to talk about the need for political actors to sometimes suppress the desire for power and take side with the survival of the system. No system is perfect. So when I urge that politicians should learn to accept election results and demonstrate patriotism, even in the face of naked provocation, it is based on my experience, my own experience. The lives of our people, the stability of our democracy, and the peace of the society are more important than our personal interests or our inflated egos of we, the leaders. Let me at this point also mention that next Saturday, 4 days away, the Edo gubernatorial election will be taking place. And also October 10, another gubernatorial election will hold on those states. This should be a starting point for our demand for a credible electoral process. Whilst we wait for the new electoral bill to be passed, we can begin to demand that the right things are done by all stakeholders in this election. Led by our President Muhammadu Buhari, we can ensure that these two elections signpost his desire, or our collective desire, and his desire particularly, to leave for Nigeria and Africa a legacy. President Buhari can use the Edo and Ondo election to demonstrate ECOWAS' commitment to a credible electoral process. The president must put his feet down and ensure that the security agents will and must not be misused to influence the results of the election in Edo and Ondo State. Also, electoral commission should be made to be truly immune from manipulations by individuals, no matter how highly placed. Already, the international community are giving a verdict on some of the recent elections by sanctions announced by the United States. We as a country cannot continue to pretend all is well. We must demonstrate seriousness. And when I say demonstrate seriousness, not just government, all stakeholders. And that is why, again, I comment today's program, because sometimes we leave all this to just government. All those as stakeholders have a role to play. We must demonstrate seriousness and take a cue from this strong message that the international community have passed down, that these coming elections, we must make corrections. Also, the president can also send a message to the National Assembly when the members resume later in the month that he wants them to present him a new electoral bill for assent before the end of the year. This is easily achievable and will send a strong message to the international community that the government is taking this matter with the seriousness it deserves. The present COVID-19 era has presented us with more challenges, and we should refrain from aggravating the situation by undermining democracy or weakening the electoral process. Our people are more prone to reacting negatively to developments that deny them of their rights to freely choose their leaders. Nigeria cannot afford any political crisis now that has serious economic and security challenges. Let us not push the people to the tipping point. We need to learn from developments across the borders. Internal vigilance, they say, is the price of liberty. I must add that this is also the price to be paid for an enduring, vibrant, and viral democracy. So let the journey of the electoral reform start today. Let us mobilize political parties, our representatives in the National Assembly, state assemblies, other NGOs, civil society groups, professional groups, political parties, and others to join the train. I thank you for giving me this opportunity to air my views on this important issue. I wish all Nigerians a happy International Democracy Day. God bless Nigeria. God bless you all. Thank you all.